Hello, and welcome to How I Did It, the video series where I sit down in front of a microphone and I tell you how I did things, usually writing or game dev or whatever. Ha 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 ha. Today we're going to be talking about the development of the main character, Stella, from The D Stands for Demon, which is a game I just put another demo out for, and because I put the new demo out for, or I will be putting the new demo out for it, I wanted to redo her sprite, and so I did. It's also going to come with, for the very first time, a Patreon-specific little reward, which is going to be the PSD file of the sprite as she exists. So you can kind of go in there and peek around and see how I set her up. And I'll actually include a little layer, I think, that has some notes about how I set her up with layered image and RenPy. So for all you developers out there, have fun with that. With Stella being my main character, obviously she's the character I'm going to be spending the most time with to sort of figure out who she is, what she does, how she reacts to the environment that she's in. And when I'm developing a main character, for a short story or a novella or a game or whatever, I tend to think of it in terms of things I don't like, because it's a much smaller list, and then don't do those things and do other things instead. Example, I don't really like main characters who, in books specifically, it's very, very, I want to make this very clear, this is for books specifically, because it's going to change a little bit when it gets interactive. But I tend to not like characters who are like, she is amazingly good at everything. She's athletic and a genius and beautiful, and she could kill a man with a glance. Oh, and she's only 17. Or I also tend to not like, or like she's only 22. Heaven forbid someone write a female character that's like over 25. Heaven fucking forbid, right? I also tend to shy away from characters that are like, she was so quiet, but she was so smart, but she was so beautiful, and she didn't even know it, and all the boys loved her. I tend to shy away from those characters. Now, it's not that those characters are, like, inherently bad, because I absolutely want my RPG characters and my action game characters to be the most badass people in existence. Like, I am the knave, and I am a Kunari mage, and I will kick your ass. Like, that's very important to me. But at the same time, because I'm playing that character in a game, I, as a person, have direct agency in their actions. And so it's like, yeah, we're going to do this. It's going to be great. And that, for me, doesn't really translate to a book. I'm a cave gremlin. So I connect in books with main characters who are a little cave gremlin-y. And so that's why, the kind of, super powerful, awesome wizard, can't do anything wrong, characters don't really play well for me, personally, in books. And why, when I write, I tend to shy away from that and go for something a little more down to earth, depending on what I'm writing. Well, try to maintain that likability. What's interesting about visual novels is that they're interactive fiction, and this applies to any interactive fiction where you're controlling a main character, is they fall into this very delicate in-between space where you're controlling the character's actions, but the majority of the time, there's exceptions, you're not controlling every single one of their actions. They have to exhibit a certain amount of agency. Now, there are games where you do control every single thing a main character does. You can control their personality, whatever. And you have to develop a game around that, because otherwise it's just exhausting. Like, I've played games where it's like, okay, I'm actually done making decisions. Just tell me what happens next, please. Thanks. But at the same time, you are controlling actions. And so the character has to bridge that gap between player and plot. they're a link. That's where that name came from. They're a link between the narrative and the player. And so they have to be defined enough to fit in the narrative and to act with a certain amount of agency within the narrative. Because if you're going to make a choice, there's going to be cascading consequences. And so the character's going to have to navigate those cascading consequences. But at the same time, be malleable enough that the decisions that a player makes for the character still make sense for that character and don't feel out of place. That's a big thing if you follow, RPGs. There's been situations where maybe a certain dialogue tree wasn't written the best, and so you'll make a choice for the character, and the character the consequences of that choice do not feel like they fit the personality of the character that you've been developing this whole time. And so with visual novels, you have that same problem. If I have a main character and I say, okay, this character is going to interact with this character A, main characters interact with character A, the options of kick them or kiss them is going to be a little bit dramatic, because it's like, whoa, why would I want to do either of these things? Only one of these feels like it fits. But the difference between kiss him on the cheek versus kiss him on the forehead could be something that is within the realms of what a character would do naturally in making choices. So all these things taken into consideration in developing the character of Stella and the character that lives inside of her, Rose, them working together, I needed to paint the picture of a main character that was very well defined, had a very rich inner life, is the joke I like to make, because she's got a demon living inside of her, who had her own goals, her own ambitions, all things that would drive the plot forward, but still find the room that I could allow the player to make choices on her behalf. Because that's what it came down to for this main character. I wasn't creating a blank slate that a player would just transpose themselves onto. I was creating a character who would be making decisions, and you'd be making those decisions on her behalf. And you would want to find the best life for her. You want what's good for her, or you want what's bad for her, however you want to play. And a lot of that with Stella came down to creating the character, but creating room for growth. And creating room for growth in multiple directions. Because depending on which of the love interests she ends up with, the love interest route that you choose, she's going to grow in different ways. So part of that was setting up a infrastructure for the character, where when you first meet her, you have, her trunk, so to speak, the trunk of her character. And she would have these little growth buds on her. And depending on which bud, which branch you went down, it would grow that part of her character. So with, one love interest, she explores her own relationship with sex repulsion, and being a sexual being. And with one character, she explores her asexuality and her own definition of it. And another, in contrast to somebody else's definition of their own asexuality. With one character, she explores her limits of what her relationship expectations, her own relationship expectations. With one character, she explores her own relationship with sensual attraction, or I don't know how you would describe it. It's weird. That one's a weird one. But she's very calm. She's got these different parts of her. One is a little more career focused. One is like, okay, how does she explore her relationship with her own career, and her own future, and how she's never really seen it before and doesn't know what she's doing. And so it's creating a multifaceted character where each possible branch you can go down just explores a different aspect of her character. It's about making her rich and full and nuanced. So once that skeleton's in place and I figured out, what direction I want to take her character for which love interest, then it came down to the execution at the text level. And the execution at the text level for visual novels is going to be about those choices. So at each intersection, at each moment of choice, Stella has a couple different directions she can take it. Now, they're not dramatically different. They really aren't. They're not dramatically different choices. It can be just the way they proceed through a conversation. It could just be the way she responds to a stressor. And that works because we as humans, there's a level of unpredictability to us. We don't always know what we're going to do ourselves. So it's a matter of finding the balance between the variability and the expectation of how she will react. Because you also don't want to have reactions that are so out of character. You're like, why would she punch this reporter in the face? That doesn't make any sense. But also with enough variability towards like, okay, you know what? I could totally see her saying one of these three things. And I liked for her to have this moment as a player where you're making the choice of what she's going to say or what she's going to do next, and really not knowing what the best decision is. Because all the decisions seem like they're viable decisions. And they're all decisions our character would make. And they may not all necessarily be the wrong decision, but one's going to be less wrong than another. And you don't necessarily know which one that is. That was very important to me to make sure I did, so that you got a feel for the way Stella interacts with her own world. I wanted it to be less about the other character that she's talking to, like the love interest, and more about Stella's reaction. And I really wanted the whole game to be a story about her, which again necessitated making a character that was defined and full and rich, but relatable. Stella's sort of a love note to my fellow cave gremlins. She's insecure, and she's an idiot. She's dumb. She's so dumb. But at the same time, she's so smart. And she doesn't know what she wants, and she doesn't know how to interact in the world, and she doesn't know what her place is, and she doesn't know herself, and everything all the time just feels like it's being flung at her from all directions, and she's barely keeping up. And she just wants to sit in her room and read the book she got at the indie bookstore. And I want people to find themselves in that. That despite the confusion and the tumult and the everything all the time, forever, it never stops, there are these things that you can hold on to, that you can use to ground yourself and become a better version of you that can handle these things that come at you. And I hope that comes across, and I hope people find that when they read her and they live with her and they live in her life for a little bit. And if they do, then I'll have set out to do what I intended to do. So thank you for joining me on this very rambly explanation of what Stella is like from the D stands for demon. And I hope you come back for more How I Did It. If you're a patron, you get a cool PSD out of the deal. And I hope to see you around again soon. Bye.